and then she created a diversion. You should have never done that. You should have never done that.
Because it brings your attention back.
A lot. And not a lot of people saw it. If they saw it, but a lot of people didn't see it. Trust me. That's why even with she's more invested in that than him. And as a gentleman, he defends it for her honor.
How come he didn't say anything?
What, the bulldog? He's involved.
He didn't say no, it didn't happen.
He's involved. Exactly. What didn't he say anything?
Because I was waiting for him to say something as well.
Also waiting for him, but he didn't say anything. I already knew. Because you know why?
Because then it implicates him.
Besides that, he's a perfect gentleman for her.
You know, I listened to Melino's conversation with Tyrone last night, which, if you think about it, wasn't really a conversation because it was more of him doing the spillage than Tyrone. Tyrone was just there, nodding his head and not necessarily agreeing, but, you know, so that it doesn't look like he's not contributing to the conversation, you know, would ask a very silly question and just keep quiet. And then Melino would continue spilling and spilling and spilling. Yeah. So I listened to that whole conversation and I was so disappointed in Melino because, ladies and gentlemen, he just made it very obvious that some of the housemates in that house, as much as they think they're very smart, when they come across information or when they clock a fellow housemate's game, sometimes they don't even know what to do with that information. They don't even know what to do with that power that they have. And that was exactly what Melino was doing last night by, you know, ratting out Nate to Tyrone. I mean, what was he even thinking was going to happen? First of all, Tyrone is not Melino's best friend. Tyrone is best friends with Nate and Swiss. So what made Melino think that he could call Tyrone, sit him down and tell him things Tyrone already knew about Nate, and maybe that would be of benefit to him? Guys, I was wondering, like, what's the point of that conversation? So in case you missed out on it, let me tell you. So the conversation was in reference to the general house meeting that had happened yesterday where Jojo had exposed Nate's theft of the biltong. During our live conversation yesterday, we had talked about how Tyrone had created a diversion. That guy had tried to divert everybody's attention away from the core issue, which was Nate's theft of that biltong, to how they had handled an ice cream theft last week. So according to Tyrone, if they had joked about a similar situation last week, why are they trying to be so serious about it this week? Why are they calling for a meeting? And guys, that was quite funny to me because it was Swiss that called for that meeting. Remember, when Jojo, Nate, and the other girls were talking about it in the kitchen area, that's in the dining area, Swiss and Tyrone were upstairs in the head of house lounge. They were watching what was happening. And then it was a planned work between all of them to stir things up in the house, you know, to call for that meeting. So Swiss had called for that meeting. And for him, it was very obvious that his plan was to get people having a go at each other, for fights to happen. So Tyrone was aware of that. So he now saying, why would they call for a meeting? He made it look like Jojo was the one calling for a meeting to attack Nate, which was quite disappointing because this guy makes it look like Jojo is his darling little sister. And that also triggered Jojo. That was part of the reason Jojo was crying, you know, because for her, how can people accuse her of lying when obviously Nate stole the biltong and she had given Nate, you know, the benefit of doubt that, okay, maybe she was just playing one of her pranks. She'll bring it out much later, and Nate never brought it out later. And now when they're talking about it, she's denying it and acting like she didn't do anything, making Jojo look crazy. So we saw that whole situation, right? And Melino that was having the conversation with Tyrone last night, making it look like, oh, somebody created a diversion, nobody wanted to stick to what Nate had actually done. Even him in that situation during the noonday had not stood his ground. He had not been bold enough to call Nate out on a bullshit. Instead, he too was, playing around with the conversation. So in his conversation with Tyrone last night, it was saying that she created a diversion and 90% of people in the house did not notice it, but I noticed it. I caught it. And because, some of the girls were singing loudly, we could not really hear the name of the person he had claimed had created a diversion. And guys, I found it quite ridiculous because the person who actually created the diversion was Tyrone, the person Melino was speaking to at that point in time. So it made me wonder, like, okay, what is this guy playing at? Is it that you know for a fact that Tyrone was the one that first created the diversion before Nsuku then contributed to it by saying, oh, it's an accusation? And for that one, I'm going to tell you why Nsuku did what she did. So listening to Melino, I was quite disappointed because left to me, if there's anybody that should know how to, use those friends' game against them, it should be Melino, because he shares the same bedroom with them upstairs. He hears their conversations most of the time at night. He knows that they are always plotting, they're always discussing their strategy and how to play around with people in the house. So the fact that he still took what he perceived to be the truth to Tyrone, guys, I felt like that was just a very, very terrible move on his part. That's not how gamers play the game. Because he knows that Tyrone is loyal to Nate. So what was the point of telling Tyrone what he thought was the truth? Was he thinking that Tyrone was going to go against Nate? I mean, it was even more annoying because Tyrone was the one that created the diversion. So him now saying, no, she created the diversion, like he was trying to sound smart, but he wasn't smart in doing that. Because even the Tyrone he was talking to, Tyrone was just listening and doing, he was looking around to make it look like, okay, I'm paying attention, but in the real sense, he wasn't really paying attention. Getting distracted unnecessarily. People will pass, he will talk to those people. Melino was still there talking. And then he was now talking about Nate and BK's relationship. That, Nate is more invested in BK more than the way she is invested in him. That, because BK is a gentleman, BK was also part of that biltong theft. So he did not say, because Tyrone was like, why didn't he say anything? He said, he did not say anything because he's a gentleman. He will not say anything. I'm like, dude, that is the wrongest person you are having that conversation with. If you had that conversation with someone else, like Abobo will know what to do with that conversation because he has already clocked Nate's game from day one. So you thinking that you've clocked Nate and then you're going to go and tell Nate's best friend about what you've discovered about Nate, that is dumb. Like, guys, I was so disappointed in Melino because I know for a fact that Tyrone will spill that tea to Nate and Swiss, and Melino will become one of their targets. And so, speaking about Nate now, I don't know how many of you noticed that Nate has started operating on Mata and Nsuku. Now, with Nsuku, things are not going to go well because BK is is in between them. But with Mata, Nate has been working really hard, harder than the devil, to get Mata on her side. And this is all because of the conversation that she had with Tyrone and Swiss 2 nights ago, which people were calling conspiracy, guys. If people had really paid attention, they would have heard the part where Swiss was advising Nate to try to get Mata on her side because Mata has the power of compelling people, of changing people's perception about other people. And then he had referenced the Valentine's Day picnic they had on Friday, where Mata, who did not really like Siphesihle before, all of a sudden was showering her with accolades, saying that, she's such a cool person, she's an amazing person. And all the females were actually showering Siphesihle with accolades. And Swiss had caught that. And so he was advising Nate that, listen, you have to get this girl on your side. You have to work on her. You have to build something with her so that you have at least one of the females on your side. Because if you think about it, none of the females like Nate like that because they've seen through her game and they don't want to be caught in her web. And so Nate had started. Yesterday afternoon, before that general house meeting, she had had a conversation with Nshini, Nsuku, and Mata. Now, Nshini has clocked Nate. So Nshini was seated right there, but she wasn't necessarily contributing to the conversation. She was quiet. And who knows, Nshini might, spill it to Siphesihle and Pilile much later. But Mata and Nsuku, they were contributing to the conversation because Nate was now doing, it was more like a smear campaign against, what's her name now, Siphesihle. More like trying to deconstruct that flowery construction that Mata has about Siphesihle. And whilst Nate was telling her own crooked version of the story about why she believes that Siphesihle is beefing her in the house, Mata was like, oh yeah, I understand you. Yeah, if somebody has an issue with you, they should come and talk to you in your face. I get it. I get it. Nsuku was like, yes, I understand. I understand. Now, Nate did not stop there because that brief moment they had having that conversation about Siphesihle, there was an impact because during the general house meeting, Nsuku raised a point in defense of Nate, or in Nate's defense, talking about, oh, it is just an accusation. When she was referring to Jojo now, that it's just an accusation. When you saw her taking the biltong, why didn't you say so? You should have said something because now we cannot believe you. She was seriously defending Nate. And you could see Nate sat there like a queen, because she knew that there were people defending her. Nsuku was defending her, surprisingly. Tyrone, not surprisingly, defending her as well by creating a diversion. And then there was also Mata, who tried to act like she was not taking anybody's side, but you could tell that she was indirectly defending Nate. Talking about, if anybody takes things from the general house, I don't have any issues with that. Or if anybody takes my personal item, I'm going to be mad at you. I'm going to No, she was just ranting. Which for me was noise because Mata is very good at ranting, but does not have the balls to take action. And even before the party, Nate was bonding with Mata. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm patiently waiting for the Monday nominations because all that media rounds that Nate has done about Siphesihle in the house, well, we're going to see if it's going to yield any fruit on Monday. How the housemates nominate will determine if there was an impact. And you see, in case you don't know what Nate is doing, she's doing what she and BK discussed. Instead of getting their hands dirty, they would plant the seed and use people to do the dirty work for them. So to eliminate Siphesihle, it is for Nate to plant the seed of discord or the seed of dislike in the hearts of most of the girls that she can get, in a corner, especially Mata. Mata will then go ahead to spread that seed to any other person in the house that she wants to, and then people are now going to, mobilize themselves and nominate Siphesihle for eviction. Or if Big Brother is going to spring up another eviction surprise, it has to be Siphesihle that leaves, according to Nate's plan. So ladies and gentlemen, let me know your thoughts about this gist. Are you spilled? Share in the comment section below. I'll see you guys on another video soon. Thanks for watching and have an amazing day. Bye.